Всім привіт! І сьогодні така тема, я не знаю, чи мені це цікаво, чи навколо мене люди про це постійно говорять, і така от інформація. Якщо вам це от не близько, ви розмовляєте про щось інше, слухайте, я колись чула, мама отлічника, вона каже, про що ви розповідаєте, як не про їжу? Про що ви говорите, які от теми? Ну, я можу на різні теми говорити. І про кіно, і про філософію, і про релігію. Ну, про їжу я от багато говорю. Особливо, якщо це, я бачу історії інших людей, чую історії інших людей і розумію, що в мене такі самі фобії. Так ось, якщо ви з назви ще не зрозуміли, буває, що я так назву як закручу, що нічого не зрозуміло, то хочу вам сказати, що сьогодні про харчові фобії і харчові розлади. Це такі розповсюджені у цьому світі, і воно там є і так, що індивідуальне дуже, індивідуальні прояви, і треба дивитись на кожен випадок окремо. І є так, що можна на групи поділяти. Типове дуже. Так, і сьогодні не про вагу, не повірите. Я вже розповідала, що як я стала жити сама, то я почала запасатися їжею. Це от моя історія. В мене є консерви, в мене є дуже багато води. Треба рахувати, скільки я її вже не знаю, куди мені поставити. Усі шафи, у вітальні. Бо в мене така от фобія, що я лишуся одна, і мені треба буде води, а я буду хвора і не зможу виїхати. І купити собі води, консерви. В мене є крупи, макарони, паста. Паста, макарони одне і те саме. І консерви різноманітні. І от є таке. І косметикою я так от запасаюся, бо я думаю, що от буду лежати, помирати, і треба ж, щоб гарною померти, крем на обличчя собі нанести, а я не зможу доїхати до сусіднього містечка Літеркіні і не куплю собі. І це от, я жартую зараз, це от я так роблю, запас роблю. І це в мене сталося так от після того, як я стала жити окремо. Бо чоловік, раніше його можна було відразу так от сказати, їдь за тим. Єдине, що косметику я його не просила купувати. Тільки в аптеці він міг щось питати, і то купити не те. А їжу відразу він піднімався, сідав за кермо і їхав купляти їжу. Так, про себе розповіла. І от зараз я чую іммігрантські історії. Жінок, які іммігрантки, от я чую з Румунії. Одна матір-одиначка, 45 чи 46 їй років, може вже 46, дитині 7 чи 8 рочків. І вона робить от те саме. Тобто в неї запаси їжі, в неї навіть це гірше.
Potato pancakes, soda bread, and seafood chowder. There's a lot to Irish food beyond corned beef and cabbage. What other iconic dishes do you need to try? Keep watching for a breakdown of the best Irish cuisine. Let's start with boxty, also known as the potato pancake. It's made by mixing both grated and mashed potatoes with milk, eggs, flour, and butter for a half pancake, half hash brown patty that's fried on the griddle until it's perfectly crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. Boxty is quintessentially Irish because it celebrates the humble spud in all its glory. Potatoes have been a staple in Ireland for centuries and in many ways shaped the entire trajectory of the country. According to Potatoes USA, they arrived in Ireland in the late 1500s when Sir Walter Raleigh planted the country's first spud in County Cork on a 40,000-acre estate given to him by Queen Elizabeth I for his role in suppressing a rebellion. As fate would have it, potatoes were exceptionally well-suited to Irish soil, and as their numbers exploded, so did Ireland's population. It skyrocketed from 1.2 million in 1590 to 8.4 million in 1841, and more than half of Irish citizens, primarily the rural poor, came to rely almost exclusively on potatoes for their daily nutrition. Today, boxty is far from peasant food. Entire restaurants and cooking competitions are dedicated to it. And you can find people eating boxty for breakfast with bacon and eggs, or even for dinner or dessert.
Pancakes! Pancakes!
Potato farls are another tasty dish the Irish devised to use potatoes. The classic recipe calls for just 3 simple ingredients: mashed potatoes, flour, and melted butter. And the resulting dough is thick enough to hold its shape as it's rolled into a thin, flat circle, cut into fourths, and fried for a few minutes on each side. While potato farls might sound similar to boxty, there are a few key differences. Boxty contains grated potatoes, making them more reminiscent of a hash brown, while potato farls use mashed potatoes only for a smoother, more bread-like texture. That makes them the perfect stand-in for toast, served for breakfast alongside bacon and eggs to mop up the last bits of yolk. When you eat a whopping 65 spuds a day, you better know how to make killer mashed potatoes. And since the average Irish adult in 1844 did just that, they've certainly answered the call. Rich and buttery Calcanna is an Irish mashed potato recipe made with milk, butter, leeks, and cabbage. It's so ubiquitous throughout the country that you can often find its recipe printed on sacks of potatoes. While we'd eat these mashed potatoes any day of the week, they were traditionally served during Samhain, a Celtic festival celebrated on October 31st. If that date sounds familiar, it's because Samhain is the inspiration behind Halloween.
Trick or treat! Trick or treat!
One of 4 Celtic festivals of the year, Samhain signified the time when the veil between worlds was so thin that spirits and fairies could return to the land of the living. As described by Food and Wine, food played a major role in the festival, and Calcannon was one of several traditional Irish dishes used to dabble in a little fortune-telling. Small charms were hidden throughout the potatoes and said to predict the diner's future. A coin meant wealth was on the way, a ring meant you were soon to be married, and a thimble, well, let's just say you better buy a cat because you're in for life as a spinster. While we're on the topic of Samhain, let's talk about barmbrack. Barmbrack is a sweet Irish fruit loaf traditionally made with raisins. In its early days, barmbrack was made with yeast, but many recipes today will use baking soda for ease. Much like Calcannon, barmbrack used to be reserved for Samhain, and if you were lucky, might have given you a peek into your future. Remember, those little charms hidden in Calcannon? They made an appearance in barmbrack too. Today, barmbrack recipes include all kinds of different fruits, from cherries to candied orange peel and everything in between. However you try it, we highly recommend pairing it with a cup of tea for maximum enjoyment. Soda bread is another iconic Irish bread, one you'll find at breakfast, lunch, and dinner tables across the country on a regular basis. Each family has their own favorite recipe, and they can be savory or sweet, use wheat flour or white flour, contain raisins, currants, or no fruit at all. What makes them all soda bread isn't that they're made with soda pop, because they aren't. Soda bread is called soda bread because it's leavened with baking soda. Irish soda bread came about during the famine that hit Ireland in the 1840s because yeast became exceedingly difficult to get, and soda bread could be made with just a few essential ingredients: flour, baking soda, buttermilk, and salt. It's the reaction of the acid in the buttermilk and the base of the baking soda that makes the bread rise. Irish soda bread is one of those foods that shines on its own, so it's best served simply with some high-quality Irish butter.
And let me say this, is there anything better than butter?
Shepherd's pie is more like a casserole than a pie. Traditional recipes use lamb and vegetables like onions, carrots, and peas, all topped with a layer of, you guessed it, creamy mashed potatoes, acting as the pie's crust. While shepherd's pie actually originated in Scotland, Masterclass notes Ireland was the first to use mashed potatoes rather than a pastry crust. Before that, it would have been more akin to a classic pot pie. Like many of Ireland's most traditional foods, shepherd's pie was born of frugality. It was an easy way to use leftover meat from the week before and any vegetables you happened to have on hand for a warm, comforting meal. Today, many of the shepherd's pie recipes you'll see use ground beef. Technically, this is a cottage pie as opposed to a shepherd's pie. They're essentially the same thing. There's also something called a Cumberland pie that uses chunks of beef instead of ground. Black and white puddings are a quintessential part of a traditional Irish breakfast, served alongside baked beans, over-easy eggs, bacon, sautéed mushrooms and tomatoes, toast, butter, and lots of tea. Both are sausages made with some combination of a grain like oatmeal or barley, breadcrumbs, spices, and ground pork meat or liver. Some also include animal fat, and especially in Ireland, additional binders like potato flour to help keep them together. Black pudding is especially unique because it includes the addition of pork or beef blood to give it a stronger color, flavor, and additional nutrients. While recipes vary widely,
На Ютубі, не можу я дивитися, бо там про колаборантів теж, їх реакції. Оце трагедія, а там, якісь там катастрофи – це трагедія, хвороби, раптова смерть, тобто цього теж багато. А що, ти боїшся померти у Ірландії з голоду і купив собі консерви? дешеві, в якоїсь ненормальній кількості. Ну, це ж з цього поплакати мені важко. Це таке, можна вирішити. Головне бути живими. До речі, це ірландська така думка, як ніхто не помер, то і вже і непогано, вже і добре. В чоловіка родина, постійно мені чоловік це говорив. Дякую вам за увагу і я сподіваюся на ваші коментарі.